Today, I enjoyed my conversation with Tricia Huffman, a podcast host, speaker, manager of integrity to Grammy Award-winning artists, and founder of Your Joyologist. Tricia joined me today to discuss her book, F the Shoulds, Do the Wants. Get clear on who you are, what you want, and why you want it. She says forget what you've been told you should do or should be. Instead, ask yourself, what do I want? I hope you learn as much from Tricia as I did. Tricia, welcome to the Growth Guide. Where I'd love to start with you today is if you can give our listeners a brief bio about yourself if they may not know you yet.
Oh, a brief bio. I don't know why anytime somebody asks me that, I'm all like, oh, what am I going to say? There's so much to say. So people know me as Your Joyologist. That's the brand name I've used for over a decade ago. And my bio would be basically I'm all about being honest with yourself and being real in your life so that you then can be choosing your life every single day. So it's not just about claiming joy, but being really present to your thoughts and the realities of life. And then you're alive today. So please enjoy it. I don't know if you want background, but I'm like, that's
No, that's perfect. It lines interestingly with a tweet I put out yesterday, which was every day you wake up, remember today is the best day to be alive. And so just being in that present moment. And so your book that we're going to be talking about today is F the Shoulds, Do the Wants. And where I want to start on the book with you, partially because you bolded it for me, was the quote, when you are always looking outside of yourself for validation, you will always be chasing it, no matter how much you get. Can we start there and unpack that one for the listeners?
Yeah, and you saying it's funny, even though it's my quote, I got chills listening to it because it's something, again, I think I also am very clear in everything I do and say nothing is oh, I got this and now I'm good, right? It's everything is this continual. So it's yes, I know that. And I've told myself and other people so many times. And then it's just right. Because I think we're programmed to be looking outside of ourselves. And from a very young age, I sort of I didn't really give you a bio. I gave you my, I guess, intention to what I do. But I, at a very young age, realized that I was constantly I didn't want to fit in, but I also didn't want to stand out. I really just wanted to be myself, but I wouldn't let myself be myself. So I was constantly seeking approval. I'm talking junior high days. If somebody asked me not even what's your favorite song, but what song are you listening to? What song did you listen to on the way to class? I couldn't just answer because I would be going through these files of what should I say that would make them think I'm cool, or looking for approval. That sort of thing. So I'd be looking through these files of if I say this, is that good? So I craved approval so bad, but at the same time, I wasn't ever allowing myself to actually be who I was or have my own opinion. So what did it even matter if I was getting these people's approval, but it wasn't true to me? And then later in life, I remember working closely with someone, or just I really was how come I don't feel I'm being seen and appreciated? I just want this person to really acknowledge how much they do for them, really feeling this deep pain of wanting to be seen. And then out of the blue, with no me prodding or trying to be, laying clues or anything, I got the best acknowledgement, from the heart, deepest thing, and I couldn't accept it. I was so oh, no, no big deal. And not just me trying to be minimize it. I realized I still was I wanted it so bad and I saw it in myself, but then when somebody else gave it to me, no part of it sunk into I feel seen. I feel valued. And I felt it too, what? I just got what I wanted. This person delivered it to me. And I realized that it's never going to matter unless I'm giving it to myself. And even in some way, I wanted it because I was why won't this person value? But then once I got it, I still was oh no, but I'm not enough, or I could be better. There was still this clinging to not being enough, even once I got the validation I was craving. And so that's when I saw nobody can ever give it to us. We do need it. I'm always it's us at the beginning and at the end of the day that has to be oh yes, I'm proud of myself. oh yes, I'm happy with the choices I'm making.
Yes. And it seemed in your writing that one of the pivotal moments for you was when your dad passed away tragically. And you started to realize this strong internal message of, I need to eliminate the word should from my life. Not just the idea of not living the shoulds or shoulding yourself, but you said to take it one step further and absolutely kick it out of your life. And then something that seemed to tie to that was this idea of the subconscious conditioning. So are our wants actually our wants, or has society and our upbringing influenced us to think we want these wants when they're really still shoulds?
Yeah, like sometimes.
What did that all look like for you at that point in your life?
Because that's what it's funny. It's like sometimes we think we're going after what we want, but it's really what we think we should want. It's like, there's so much to unravel.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I always talk about there's two key moments in my life. The one happened when I was 15, and I sort of had a breakdown after I realized, like I said, I was like analyzing everything. And at that moment, I chose to live my life. Like I actually did often think about ending my life, and nobody would have guessed that from me or have known that. And so at that point on, I chose to I'm going to try really hard to make my opinion of myself matter more than what I think other people think of me. And that really changed my life. And so I moved through my life doing what I wanted. Like, okay, it's painful in many ways to be like, but I want this. Oh, but they might not like me, or they might this. Anyway, so when my dad passed away, I already thought I had been living a life of once. I had pursued my dream career, which was to be a live sound engineer, which was very challenging, but I made it happen and was touring with icons. I traveled on my own time. I really was living a life of my once. But when my dad passed away, it shook me up, and I just wanted to shake people on the street. I basically felt like, oh, I'm doing a great job. Look at me living my life and taking care of myself and doing my life. But what about these people? It was no longer enough for me to just be living my life. So I really wanted to shake people, to be like, you're alive today. Are you living your life or just going through the motions? And I ended up giving up my dream career when I was meant to be on tour for another 9 months at least. And I had no idea what I was going to do, but I just wanted to shake people up. And I got this message to give up the word should. And that's where it started. And I honestly don't know where that message came from. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try that out. That's going to be super easy because I don't live a life of shoulds. Yeah, why not try that? And it changed my life because just by paying attention, because when I took it on, I stuck to the actual word, not just the idea of shoulds. And I was shocked at how much that word tried to come out of my mouth and then was in my thoughts, in my feelings. So when I got so tuned into the actual word and not just the idea of shoulding on myself or doing the shoulds, that's when I realized, whoa, I have no idea. We have no idea how much we are doing these subconscious things that we're not actually asking ourselves what we want. Do I want to do this or not? It's just an automatic should. And I was so committed that I would be like, what should? And I would sit there and be like, I don't understand. What else do I say? Wait a minute. What do I say if I'm not going to say should? And that's where I ended up realizing the best choice for me, I felt, was swapping it out with want. And that then brought me back in the driver's seat of my life. Okay, what should I do? What should we eat? We should do this. What should we do this? We're constantly looking outside of ourselves and just going through these databases of shoulds that we've collected from society, from growing up, from what we've seen. And so we think we should be doing as humans, as people, as to get success, to be happy, all of these things, to be well, right? So we're just collecting this information and then not really how does this feel to me? So by me just focusing on that one word, I realized, and so I gave that word up over a decade ago. I commit to it so strongly that even when I'm reading my kids' books, I don't say the word. I substitute it out because I'm afraid if I just start saying it, then I'll lose this awareness I have. That's
I hear you.
How dialed in I am. So that was over a decade ago, but I still feel and overcome the weight of shoulds every single day. So I'm not saying it, but I feel it in my body. That I'm oh, I should be doing this. I should do that. Oh, I should have said this. But I'm so mindful of it that now, even though I'm not saying the word, I'm tuned into that energy and whew, okay, what's going on here? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? This.
That's a key I want to zone in right there, is that energy shift. Because for you, when you first said, and if I take a step back, you first said that I don't want to use should anymore. So you sound a little like me. I have a banned word list. There's certain words, certain phrases that I don't allow myself to say. They're eliminated from my vocabulary. And should is one of them. So it was interesting to read it. And you went through a lexicon of what can I replace should with? I ended up going with choose. That was where I landed. What do I choose to do? You landed on what do I want? And when you did, you felt an energy shift. What did that look like for you? And what were some of the other words that you were trying before you got to want that left you feeling a little wanting, if you will?
Yeah. Choose never came up for me. And I love that that's what you landed on, because I do now realize that like it's sort of seeing that every should that comes your way is a choice. So that's what I'm like, and in the book, I'm constantly going back,
Yes.
like, yeah, it's your choice. Like, it's your choice to not have to see when you see the word should, it's like a yield sign to slow down and then like look at it. So I love that you landed on, like, I was like, oh, I love that. That fits for me. I was just like, must, is should, must. But that felt sort of like pushy and not like it was my choice. Like if I were to swap should out for must, it was like, I get that there is an energetic boost to it and it is sort of your choice, but it also kind of felt like this is being pressed on me. It's not mine. Could is like a nice, gentle one. Like, oh, I should take a walk, or I should go take a walk. I'm not feeling great. I could go take a walk. Could I gives you this like option and it's open, but it doesn't really feel like very pressing to me. It's like, yeah, okay, I could do that. Meh. So that didn't work for me. I can't remember, I can. Again, that's like seeing, okay, I have an option. For me, I landed on want, and it's not always, but I feel like for me, the majority of the time, the best swap is want, because then I am coming back to it. Is like you're saying, I'm choosing it. And it's also then I am choosing it. And with that, and then with my steps and in the book I go through that, I'm usually like asking myself some questions like, well, why do I feel I should do this? Why would I want to do this? Like I am coming from it is my choice and like my choice. Like I want to do this. And like I said, most of the time it is getting clear on like, well, why? Why do I feel that? And so then it will be like, well, wait, maybe I don't want to. That's just what society has told me that I should be doing. So for me, that energetic shift, the shoulds, it's like, oh, should for me feels like more heavy. It's being pressed on me. Like my shoulders are cringing. And then when I go to want, and with want, I realize I'm allowed. Like that was a big freeing thing. Every time I would go from a should to a want, to be like, yeah, I'm allowed to do it this way. I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to do that instead of this, like whatever. So it just want always feels so much more empowering. And like me remembering, yeah, this is my life. This is my choice. And the reality again, it's like, we don't know how much longer our life is going to last. And so I am always very present in sharing that. Like right now, I want to do this. Why do I want to do this thing?
And you had a very good point right there in that this is your life. This is what you want. Now, the interesting challenge that brings up, and you and I both call bullshit on this one, so I'd love you to share it with the reader, is a lot of people out there will say, well, Tricia, Clint, like if you're living the life you want, you're being selfish. Why is that so far from the truth? And why is living the life we want, aligned with our values, our purpose, why is that the right way for us to live, in the opposite of selfish?
Yeah, I've definitely heard that many, many, many times over the years about how like, oh, well, I can't, or that's selfish, or even like, how dare you do what you want? And again, coming back to this is your life, and I don't know how much longer we're going to be here. So like, please, live your wants. But it changes. Like I will often say like, it's the least selfish thing that you can do is to take care of yourself and to be doing things from a place of want. Because when you are doing things that light you up, that fulfill you, or just even when you're choosing to see it, like, okay, wait, take it. Because sometimes I'm also clear in the book, it's not that you're like not doing anything that's a should, but it's really looking at it. Do I want this? So sometimes it's cutting through procrastination, seeing, oh, I really hate running errands, but why do I want to run errands? And I'm like, okay, so how can I make this be enjoyable for me? So, okay, I want to run errands because blah, 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 like getting this. So it's not like you're not doing it. You're like so irresponsible. It's a really clear way to live. You're being very clear and intentional at all times with what you're doing and why you're doing it. So you're showing up from a place of want and not resentment or like things are a burden. But so when you're moving from that place, it doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone. Like, right. So I have young kids. If I was constantly like, obviously they're my kids. And so I am putting their needs before mine. But at the same time, no, a lot of times I'm like, no, mommy needs this. Like, let me take some time. Okay, we're going to leave. But first mommy needs some time to like reset like that. Because I realize when on the weekends, time disappears, we're going to have a lazy morning. It's awesome. And then we need to get out of the house and I'm rushed and I haven't done these things to take care of myself. Then I'm like so much more short-tempered. I'm not as patient with them. Like I'm not the mom that I want to be when I am not prioritizing myself and putting myself first. So that doesn't mean like, again, it's all about me, but that also doesn't affect them. Like when I'm like, even just take a couple minutes and I'm like, oh, like, let me take care of myself. Or when I'm doing the things I want to, even if let's again, with being with motherhood, I haven't always done the things that were, oh, this is what you should do as a mom. Well, I'd be like, well, I don't want to listen to kids' music. I want to listen to music I like. So whatever, you know what I mean? Does that hurt my kids? No, they didn't even understand that kids' music existed and they listened to whatever, rock and roll. Like my kids loved Queen when they were 3 and 5. Like even those traditional ways of like, okay, I'm a mom, so I should do things this way, right? So I'm like, no, I don't want to listen to that music. I want to listen to this music. That could be a way of I'm choosing my own needs over them. Theirs. No, they love the music or whatever. But anyway, when we're living our wants, when we're being intentional in this way, it doesn't just affect those people in our direct bubble, your coworkers, your family. Even if that means you're taking some time away from them or something, who you are when you are with them is different. You're more present, you're more engaged. People want to be around you. But also that affects me when I'm like, oh, I'm driving. Oh, go ahead, car. Like, oh, you want to go ahead of me? Like, it affects me how I act to strangers too when I'm living my wants because I am lit up and content and just like happy to be alive. And that affects everyone who my energy comes into contact with. So it's not selfish.
Indeed. It should be calming. I mean, you talked a bit about something that I've seen and it blows me away is how much shoulding there is for moms. You know, when you talked about having young children, the Pinterest, the Instagram, what you have to do for birthday parties, Valentine's Day, it just seems like a never-ending list of impossibility to be a mother in today's social media age. And I partially say that because you don't see any of that as a father. Like
no,
as a father, it's like, oh,
anything,
do you coach one of your kids' teams? Great. You're the best dad ever. And it's like, no, I do nothing. Like I'm useless. But like the difference between the shoulds and the expectations, it's massive.
Yeah, it is. And it's such the difference between, yes, like what the mother is and then the father is. It's like, oh, if the father's like, have taken the kids out for ice cream, what a good dad. But if the mom's taking the kids out for ice cream, like how much sugar do they eat? Or like, you know what I mean? Like there can be like so much judgment for the exact same thing too. And that's, it's just, and I realized early on, once I had kids, because I had dreamed of being a mother. And of course I loved, I wanted to take care of this thing so much. And so I did fall victim to like, oh gosh, how should this, oh, is breastfeeding and how many times should I be feeding in this and whatever. Like I was like reading a million articles, blah, blah. I want to be the best, how can these things work? And honestly, me trying to just take in information from all these people stressed me out so much that I wanted to like learn from all these people, but I was just then overwhelmed because I realized I was like internalizing all the shoulds instead of like, okay, what's working for me? Even though this is my first time being a mom and I don't know, like it was much better when I decided to block all that noise out and like listen to my child and me and my body.
That section of the book was super hard to read for me because I remembered back to the birth of our 2 children and my wife having challenges with breastfeeding. And the nurses were just so hard on her. It was, this woman just gave birth. She's exhausted physically, mentally, and what should be the most joyous moment of her life is our little child right there. And you're like browbeating her because her body's not doing what you think it should. And I'm like, by the second baby, I was like, listen, like, you can't, don't say anything to my wife. Just give me the bottle of formula. I'm feeding my baby. Like, this isn't, oh, like, you can't treat a mom who just gave birth like that. It just felt so wrong. So when I read that in your book, it really, really hit home how inappropriate that shoulding is that we do to new young mothers. Like, it just so bothered me. Sorry for the long digression on that.
No,
one.
I mean, it's great to hear that, especially as a father, that part resonated too, because I struggled to make enough milk for my first baby. And it was such a, like, I was doing everything right, all the herbs, the water, blah, 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 like this, had the lactation consultant, yeah, the latch is good, this, that, whatever. And it was really, I'm so glad that the message of fed is best is being shared more. But at the same time, I realized too that, and then I said in the book, like, I never judged anybody else for using formula too. So it wasn't even, I think even that message of fed is best, if that had been really been drilled into me, I probably still would have had those same struggles, because it was like, well, no, I'm ready. I was ready to feed around the clock and to take on the hardships of breastfeeding, and my body just wasn't up to it. And that was like a really hard thing to grasp. And that I didn't really have the support of these people that were like, no, this is the best. Nope, you got to keep doing it. Nope, if you supplement, then you're never going to recover in this and whatever. And that, like, I feel like I was starving my child for a couple days there, because I felt like, I was listening to these people that supposedly knew better than me. And it was really, really challenging. I mean, taught me some lessons, of course, but yeah. And but I think too, and I'm glad that story resonated with you, and that I hope it resonates with more people, because it's like some things like that. It's like, my body should be doing this. This should work. I'm doing everything right. And yet it's not working. And so sometimes we have to make peace with, like, sometimes that's a big part of the shoulds, is like, this should be working. This shouldn't be happening. Like, that is also a big part of life, is then like, oh, how can you make peace when things aren't, going your way?
And the thing that brings up, because what you're going through there, you're starting to doubt yourself. And so I thought it was really relevant that you said that we need to learn to doubt our doubts. And two key things that tied to that are, we need to be curious, and we need to even recognize that we're having doubts in order to be able to doubt the doubts. So very Inception-like on that one. What does that look like for the listener or the watcher? And how do we recognize, wait a second, that's a doubt. I need to question it.
Yeah. I mean, that it's such a, I mean, first of all, it's like seeing, I think a lot of the book is me, like, getting myself and getting you, the reader, to be curious with yourself, and to not just believe everything that comes into your mind, everything that you read, everything, because we're intaking so much information at once, and not everything is going to fit you. And so, but also, like, realizing your own thoughts, like, they're not always telling you the truth, and so when you really start to pay attention to what you're saying and be like, wait, what did I just say? Like, I'll catch myself, like, out of nowhere, I heard myself, like, recently was saying something like, oh, I hate this, or I hate life, like, I hate my life, or something like that. And I was like, what? Like, but I caught it. If I hadn't caught it, then who knows, I could have gone down the thing. And I was like, I can't even believe that thought came out of my mind. Like, yeah, there was something hard happening, but at the same time, there was also so much amazing happening. But, like, me being able to tune into, like, wait, what just happened in my head? But I think a big part of it too is I have so much compassion for myself, and it's sort of seeing that all of those thoughts that are happening in your head, they don't necessarily belong to you. You don't have to take ownership, because what I think can be really hard about recognizing these thoughts, and why a lot of people don't want to even realize they have them, is because then we're going to feel like, I'm a terrible person because I had that thought. Oh no. And instead of doing the work to question it, to heal it, to see, wow, is that really what I want to think? What do I want to think? Because I take you through all those steps in the book too. is that we're so often then feeling like shame or, oh my gosh, I must be a terrible person, or there's no hope for me if I had this doubt, if I said this thing. And so we end up going down like a deeper spiral instead of just like holding that and like, oh, wait, what was that? Oh, really? And then just the ability to question it, to doubt that. Do I want to believe that? Is that really the truth? And so, yeah, being able to recognize it can be a challenging thing. For me, focusing on the one word, should, ended up making me super mindful. Like just tuning into that one word makes me really mindful of my thoughts, of my feelings, of my actions, of everything. So I do realize it's like that gave me like this huge life hack. So feel free to take that on for yourself and see how it change. But I also don't realize that a lot of people are gonna be like, yeah, that's nice, but I'm not going to take it on. For me, journaling was a huge thing. And I was like most people, oh, journaling, yeah, that sounds great, but And when I discovered the morning pages style of journaling, which is from Julia Cameron's Artist Way, it was just like, right on the page for 3 pages. Don't edit. Don't make sense. Oh, did I brush my teeth today? I should have eaten blah, blah, this. I need to go to the grocery store. I'm worried about this. Like just letting yourself jump around and letting those thoughts dump onto the page. For me, that was a huge breakthrough. And that is also where I started to recognize these thoughts that I had. Because even post should and giving that up, I do realize a part of me was like, oh no, only think positive. You only think positive. I was still sort of stuck into that mind frame. Like to be a person, and I was known out in the world as a joyologist already, touring with artists, keeping them grounded. So this happened after, during that time. But I realized I would go to write things honestly on the page and stop myself. Go, oh God, I can't write that. Like a doubt, a fear, a worry would start to come out, and I would not, don't write that. If I write that down, then that means it's real. And then I don't want to manifest these doubts or fears or blah, blah. If I write them down, that makes them real. So I was trying to protect myself from these thoughts. But what I realized then, I was just ignoring them, shoving them down, trying to pretend that I didn't have these thoughts. And that didn't help. It was just I really was just more living in this fear, but not allowing myself to see the fear. Doubts. And so I started to let those thoughts out. And again, meeting myself with compassion and love. And once I then was able to see what was really in there somewhere, even if it wasn't a very present thought, but it was part of me somewhere, these doubts, these fears, these worries, shame, regret, all of it. Let myself to make friends with those things. We're so afraid. Oh, no regrets. Don't have any regrets. No, no shame. No, we are humans. And I am sorry. It's okay to have regrets. It's okay to have fears, to have doubts. That's part of your humanness. So for me, accepting that all of that is part of me being human. But again, I am not that shame. I am not that regret. It's just saying, oh yeah, you know what? If I could go back in time, I wish I hadn't done that. But sure, I've learned from that. So you can learn from something and also be wish I hadn't have done that. And like that. So for me, it was really making space for these thoughts and feelings to come out. So then I could question them, meet them with love. How can I support myself through this feeling that apparently I do have?
Thanks for listening. If you enjoy what you're hearing so far and want me to be able to get your favorite guests on this show, please do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the show and leave me a rating. The 30 seconds of your time will mean a ton to me. So much to unpack in that. There's 3 directions we can go, and I definitely want to tackle them all. So we've got fears, we have the journaling, and then we'll get into the should-haves. But let's start with, because the main one that was really jumping out at me, in Eastern psychology, they call it the monkey mind. In Stoicism, they say, question your thoughts, only give permission to the that are real. And that led to cognitive behavioral therapy, where they have the concept of thought auditing. And the way you're going about it, and even doing it through journaling, ties a lot to thought auditing, which was possibly the greatest life change I ever went through, was that process of, I had a thought, wait a second, let's put that down on paper. Let's write down some more logical thoughts right beside it. Let's come back in 5 minutes and see which one is real. Hey, wait, 98% of the time, the original one was crazy. And so I choose to stop listening to that one. So see the banned word list in action right there. So you talked about a lot of us feeling shitty because that inner voice is or inner critic, if you will, is almost never nice. So it's just constant negative thought loops. And so one of the ways you deal with that is, and I'm wondering if it's journaled or if now maybe it was journaled and now you just say it to yourself. You ask yourself 4 questions. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? How do I want to feel? And what can I do to support myself in that feeling right now? What is it? Is that a written journey to go from 1 to 4? Or is that an internal dialogue that you have?
For me, that's more of an internal dialogue. But yeah, I definitely, and I definitely take like clients and stuff with it to writing. Because I think everyone obviously is different and unique into how to grasp it. But if you're not like used to stopping and assessing things that way, in many ways, it can be more helpful to do pen on the paper and write it out. And then you get more used to it and it starts to be like, oh, okay, wait a minute. What am I feeling here? And then go through the questions yourself. Yeah. And I realized too, as you were talking, that I think, with that inner critic and that, how you said it's mostly negative, what I've realized is over the years, I talk about a lot of times, like a lot of compassion. And like, I will say, like, I do think that radical self-compassion is sort of like a superpower of mine. But what that looks like is, so again, that voice comes up in my head, but I no longer villainize that voice or be like, oh, there's the mean inner critic. I'm sort of like, oh, hey, honey, whew, there you are again. What's going on? This is you thinking you're not enough? Okay. Like, I really like, instead of, and I think that changes a lot, instead of, because we can go to, oh, here I go again. Like, I'm sabotaging myself. And we like get mad at ourselves for this part of ourselves. And instead, I've sort of accepted that it's part of myself, but that I don't have to villainize it. It's just like, oh, I understand. You think you're protecting me. I understand. This is, you've been listening to a lot of noise. And like, okay. Like, so I do, it's like, sort of like I've befriended it. It's like, oh, I understand. Let's talk about this.
And the last 2 steps in that one, going from, okay, it was throwing something at me or I was feeling something. How do you make that shift to, this is how I want to feel, and now I'm proactively going to cultivate that?
Yeah. And I'm also, obviously situation by situation, you might not be able to go like total. So this would be, how I said, I'm really tuned into my feelings and stuff because of paying attention to this one word or even noticing the shoulds, even if I'm not hearing it. So I can notice this sort of funkiness in my body and be like, oh, hey, okay, what's going on here? So that will be like, what am I feeling? And actually being able to just name it like, oh, I feel frustrated, or I feel, disappointed. I feel like, what? I think I'm in a real comparison mode because things happen so quickly. Like it could be, oh, I was on social media, saw something, it triggered me. And then I closed my phone, went to, answered a call, did this, whatever. So it could be hours later. And I'm realizing like, what is this feeling in my body? And so for me, like naming it, and then like sometimes you don't have to track it to that, but I'll be like, oh, I think that my body clung on to, I saw that so-and-so got this opportunity or something that I wish I had. And so I've been living all these hours with this like frustration. And then like, okay, so then what do I want to feel instead? So then switching and like, okay, how do I want to feel? I want to feel content. I want to feel myself like deserving, or I want to feel abundant. I want to feel peaceful. I want to feel grateful, like asking myself how I'd want to feel that. And so then, okay, well, what can I then do to help that? Like, if I want to feel grateful, then great. Let me like name 5 things I'm grateful for. Let me send a message to someone. If I want to feel, so it's sort of like trying to find something tangible that you can actually do right now. You're stressed about something. How do I want to feel? I want to feel calm. You know what? I'm going to go like lay down for 5 minutes, something. So, and I'm really big about nurturing myself. Like, what can I do to nurture myself? Because I'm about joy as a joyologist. And sometimes joy doesn't feel like all right, like, let me just pump it up and like have a dance party, move it out. So when joy doesn't feel, or when you don't know how you want to feel, you're just like in a place, then I usually will resort to, okay, well, how can I nurture myself right now? What would feel nurturing? when I don't have like a answer. But I'm just like, ah.
So let's pivot back because I wanted to make sure we didn't lose track of fear, because that's an important one for our listeners to understand. And there were a few different things that you talked about that I think could be very beneficial for them. The first was the idea, the Eleanor Roosevelt quote that said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Can we start there and then we'll keep on that path? And what does that quote mean to you, and how do you use that in your life?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm really glad you brought that up, because even at the very beginning, when you read the quote from my book about like seeking approval, years later, that's something that I related back to that quote then. So that quote, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent," I found when I was probably like 19, and I was like, I want to be a live sound engineer. I don't know what you guys are doing, but I want to do it. And I really had I was like, I ended up being helpful, but to begin with, I was just in the way. So I was like, most of those people did not want me to be there, just whatever, it was like, oh yeah, so I want to learn what you're doing. They're like, great, help. Can you do this? And I'd be like, what's that? Okay, great. Can you do this? I don't know how to do that. So I was very much like, people were like, what is this girl doing here? Like, get her out of the way. And there was a lot of like judgment and like whatever coming at me. And so I saw that quote, and that maybe no one can make me inferior without my consent, even though I did not know what I was doing. I knew that I wanted to be there and I wanted to learn. Yeah. So it's like, these people can be throwing shade at me and like trying to whatever. They eventually like fell in love with me, and they were like my big brothers, but like then people would be coming in daily like that. Anyway, so like, no one can make me feel inferior without my consent. They can try to judge me. They can say these things, but like, it's me believing. And again, even if I know I'm not the best yet, I don't even know what I'm doing, but I want to be here. And so I feel like I believe to be here and I deserve to try. And so obviously I was kind as I was doing it, but so that no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I later brought that into everything in my life. Like, wait, no one can make you feel loved without your consent. And like, going back to that validation I was craving at the beginning, and the person gave me it, right? No one can make me feel that without my consent. Even I got it. And I'm just like, no, okay, there was still a part of me like, no, okay, I can't accept it though. Like, you have to do the work yourself. So that's what I'm saying. Other people are important in our lives, right? And you need somebody to believe in your idea, usually, to get a yes and this and that. But at the same time, no one can make you feel anything without your consent. And so that has been like such a guiding like light for me throughout my life. And so this reminder that when people are judging me, when people are telling me you can't do that, that doesn't make sense, who do you think you are, that's not going to work, are you sure that's the best choice? No one can make me feel inferior without my consent. What do I believe? Do I believe that this is possible? Is this what I want? And so would continue on that journey.
In such a powerful frame, and as a parent, a really hard one to also teach our children. And the one that jumps out the most is when one of our children may say about their sibling, well, he made me angry, or she made me angry, or you made me angry. It's like, whoa, wait a second, son. None of us made you angry. You're choosing anger right now. There's a difference between those two things. And as a mom, is that a conversation you have with your kids about choosing their emotion and choosing the state they want versus, well, you made me angry, Mom. You upset me.
Yeah, that's funny because my youngest will be like, you made me, if she tripped over my foot, then she would be like, you made me trip. Or if she will even it's not even an emotional thing, but I'm like, honey, you gotta have to take some ownership of the fact that you walked into my leg, about anything. She's never I got hurt or I tripped. It's so-and-so did this to me. And I'm like, oh, honey.
Yeah.
So, but yes. And also I gave both my daughters the middle name Rose to represent that quote. So I so want that instilled in them. But yeah, the path with motherhood, it's validate the feeling. It's I understand. Oh, that's hard. And this. So I'm always trying to explain, especially when they come home and they're upset about, something a kid said or did this or whatever. And so it's okay, I'm trying to do the work of let me hear you. because I was very much in the like, oh, okay, nope, this is what I'm saying, household. Like, shut up, this is it. And so I'm like, okay, let me hear you. And then, okay, let's look at it this way. Okay, and let's look at it this way. And one thing that really helps my kids understand seems to be how you would treat, especially with themselves, because they will, 2 daughters, yeah, they're getting a blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, can you imagine if a friend did that to you at school or said that or treated you that way? So I try to always take that into what would that feel like if somebody did that to you? And that but trying to do it in this very again, let's gentle calmness, that space, and not the aggravated. But I can only do that when I'm taking care of myself. If I'm not taking care of myself, then I'm coming from the
Yeah, why is mom yelling at me? So staying on fears for a minute, I thought this one was a really relevant one. So I'll read you a section that you wrote and then let you color between the lines for the listener. Is we try to push our fears away, to bury them deep down. We fear that acknowledging them will make them come true. But really, when we turn the lights on them, we begin to break free of them. What does that look like? Because even earlier when you were talking about the journaling, you were saying when you have the fears, oh, I can't write that down. But how does it actually free you when you instead say, well, no, I will write that fear down?
Yeah. So back in the day, I would be like, no, I can't write that down. I can't acknowledge I have a fear because I am strong, determined, positive Tricia. So I can't have fears. But the reality was once I started to, oh, wait, what? Okay, let me look at this. Then I was able to question the fear and even going deeper. So one of my practices is to let's look at the worst case scenario. Okay, you're afraid to do something.
Yes.
So if everything goes wrong, if let yourself instead, you don't, oh no. Again, if I go down that path to try to play out that the fear really comes true and everything goes wrong, am I then putting energy into it's going to go wrong? That was a fear of mine in looking at my fears. So I was like, ugh. But then okay, let's look at it then. Let's really look at this. And if I usually every time I have a fear, and I'm going, let me go through these steps. When you look at the worst case scenario, then I'm still end up being yeah, and it feels worth it, but still I want to do it. But okay, but is that going to really happen? It takes the power away when you actually let yourself to dig into the fear from, again, I'm coming from it from this all right, let's look at the data. Okay. That. So for me, it really takes the power away to question the fear, to then go, so all right, then what if everything absolutely goes wrong? And usually when you're doing that again, then it's still I don't think I've ever gone through those and then decided not to do the thing. It usually is yeah, okay, and I still want to do it. I'm okay, well, that's really going to happen. Or great, if that happened, then I'd still be happy I tried. Never. And this is just not even for me, for people I've taken it through. Never, ever, ever has somebody gone through the worst case scenario and then decided not to do the thing.
Yeah, there's almost always an asymmetrical upside to doing the thing relative to the worst case scenario. One of the easiest ones we highlight, I had a guest on, he highlighted this for me and it stuck in my head wonderfully, is the idea of content creation. And so if you look at social media as an example, the worst case that happens if you write a tweet that doesn't land is no one reads it. Gets buried in the algorithm. As long as it's, we're not talking about a tweet that's cancelable.
Yeah.
In which case, that's downside. But you just write a bad tweet, no one reads it. And if you write a good tweet, it goes viral and it changes your life. You look at the upside and downside of that situation, and so many people are afraid to just put themselves out there when the upside is through the roof and the downside is practically nothing.
Yeah.
In so many of these situations we look at.
Yeah, because I think some of the biggest fears are in putting yourself out there, making a request, sending an email about a possibility, or can you consider me for this? The worst case scenario is usually getting a no, or maybe not hearing back. Depending on who you are, not hearing back could be worse than getting a no. But it's also if you're already leaning into, well, I'm probably just going to get a no, then what does it hurt? you probably want to switch your attitude before you press send or do the ask that it's a possibility. But also, if you already are like, well, I'm just going to get a no, then so then go ahead and shoot. Why not? Go for it. You're already prepared to get a no. What if you got a yes? Maybe.
And Tricia, as a podcast host who interviews authors, that was the most freeing realization I could ever have. Was the worst, it's not even bad. The worst answer is you don't even get an answer. The second worst is you get no. Who cares? If someone says no, it's okay, well, you're busy. You've got a big life. Sure. You said no. And a huge proportion of people actually say yes. So it's just amazing the conversations you get to have if you're just willing to let go of, well, someone might say no.
Yeah. No, I'm the same too. And when I first started my podcast and would put myself out there and another person who had had a podcast for a longer time, they had a bigger platform, whatever, oh my gosh, how did you get so-and-so? I can't believe you got so-and-so on your podcast. How did you figure that out? I was I sent them a DM. That was it. I got it. They were wait, exactly. What? They were what? You just sent them a DM? I was yeah, I figured why not just put it out there? And they replied. You never know. Sure, there are a lot of people I have not heard back from. Yeah, but I've gotten a lot of yeses that I'm I can't believe this person said yes to me. And they wouldn't have said yes if I hadn't have asked.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And so let's pivot now to, we've been talking more present-based and forward-looking. And one of the biggest areas we should ourselves, though, is the should-haves, when we can't stop thinking about the past, instead of using the past to learn, collect data, and move forward in life. So what does it look like for you? And what does the phrase, what can I do right now? How does that play into it?
Yeah, because should-haves are no fun, and I do think there's a lot of shame in should-haves, and I feel like shame might be one of the, most challenging things to, live with emotional-wise. So when I notice I'm in a should-have, then, and that could be about anything. It could even be I shouldn't have sent that text. I should have waited. Why did I say that? It could be something about super small to then looking, all of a sudden remembering a memory from 20 years ago and I was so immature. I can't believe I acted there's all sorts of ways that the should haves, or you see that I see the dishes that I didn't do last night. I should have done the dishes. I'm so lazy, this, that, whatever. So should haves can show up for all sorts of reasons and they're never fun. So when I notice myself in that space or feeling I should have done something, then I I sort of look at it as collecting data. That's a thing that feels helpful for me. And that's whether you're looking for opinions on something, you're researching, not saying this is the way things should be done or must be done, but this is okay, that's information. So looking back and seeing, instead of, I can't believe I wrote that text and just hit send. I really wish I had taken more time with that. I don't even know I'm even responding to that person. They're never going to whatever. They just see things, whatever train you're going to on, the thing already happened. What already happened. So that's a big reminder for me. First of all, I can sit here analyzing it and giving myself this whole, dissertation of what I should have done differently. But what already happened. I am here now. But then why not look at it as, okay, well, how can I, so I try to, again, instead of punishing past self, how can I set up future self and make present self feel better about this? So it's looking at it okay, that doesn't feel good that I sent this message. So in the future, how about I give myself a rule? When I get a message that unsettles me, triggers me, whatever, I don't allow myself to reply for at least 30 minutes. Would that make me feel better? Do I feel if that's what I had done in this situation, do I think that I would have handled it better? I do think that would have helped. Okay, great. So even though that thing already happened, I feel better about, okay, this is what I can do in the future. You might still though be but there's some. So okay, what can I do right now? It could be, do I want to send another message and be hey, I don't know if that came off the right way. Can we talk about this later? That it could be actually going to the person that it happened with and being can we do this? It could just be again, going to this, what can I do to nurture myself? What can I acknowledge myself for? Like I feel like I messed up right now. Okay, I've set myself, future self up for, I have a plan for what to do on this occasion again, but like I'm still feeling pretty bummed. So like, okay, what can I do? Like, how about I acknowledge myself for being a good friend, for trying, for wanting to be a better person? That. So it is like processing it. How could I do this differently instead of how could I have done this differently? If I got to redo this, what would I do? Okay. And then use that for future. And then, like I said, if that doesn't already make you feel better, there's still some lingering, then what can I do right now to support myself? Calm my nervous system down, go for a walk, call a friend. It could be related to that thing or just like, oh, let me get some joy. Let me take care of myself. Let me tend to my heart.
And what I love about that is the different layers of mindfulness that are layered into it. What's already happened is happened. I can't change it. The past is the past. Being compassionate with ourselves and nurturing ourselves in the present moment and saying, what can I do right now? Recognizing right now is the only thing we can actually change. We can't change what's already happened. Though there is that nuance of, well, if it happens again, how would I handle it differently? Knowing it won't be the exact same situation, but how will I handle it differently? That's a beautiful way to look at it. I love that.
It does give some, like, again, even though it can't change what already happened, it does give me like some relief for like, oh, look, I've learned from this. This does feel better. That like instead of punishing yourself and beating yourself and living back in that is never going to really help you or really create change in the future. Like it's not really that great to punish yourself into change. But what if you loved yourself into change in this like, okay, yes. I don't like how I handled that, or I don't like how this went. So again, even if it's not changing that, but just allowing yourself to see, oh, okay, this is how, if I got a replay, this is how I would have loved to do it.
And when we think about that, another area of mindfulness that you talk about is, and we've both landed on ones that are similar and slightly different, is the idea of a forgiveness practice. In our forgiveness practice, recognizing we can be forgiving others, but we also need to learn to be forgiving of ourselves. And for me, what that looks like is when I have one of these situations where, really hard situation with someone, there's anger, there's shame, whatever the emotion is when I'm doing loving kindness meditation, I'll picture that person as one of the people that I'm offering loving kindness to. May you be well, may you be safe, may you be loved, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be peaceful, may you be protected. And if I say that about them and over while picturing them and then end it with, and I forgive you, and each time, and I forgive you. And if you say that 10, 20 times while picturing their face, it's really hard when you see them again an hour later to be angry. Like you've just wished this person so much kindness, and now it's very hard to say, well, I'm still angry. You've just eased that out. And then also being able to do that to myself. For you've landed on your own forgiveness practice. What does that look like for you? And is that something that you also offer yourself?
Yes. And it's funny because, this forgiveness practice works. And it's so simple that I like had a hard time even like calling it a forgiveness practice for years or like sharing it with people because it's like, this is just too simple. And what it basically
Which is what it should be.
Exactly. What we want it to be. No.
Oh, yes. Oh, good choice.
What we choose for it to be. No, yeah. So, and it basically, and it came just from an in the moment of like, so wanting to not be like hate someone, for something and just be like so upset and it doesn't feel good to be in those emotions. And you can try to like, oh, okay, I understand. I've had a talk with this person, blah, blah, blah. I can try to, whatever, they're a human, they're doing your best. Like we can try to intellectualize all these things and the forgiveness and all of that. And it's still like, but I just really don't like this person or whatever, but still like living in my body. And so I just then like started saying to myself, I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. Like I just was saying it in my head because I was like out at a busy place and this person was there. And I just like was, just kept saying it. And as I was saying it, the energy started to dissipate and it started to move away. And then I also started to like laugh at myself of like, who am I to even be in a position of I forgive you, as if I'm all a holy, mighty person who has never, done anything wrong, or you know what I mean? Or been immature, or whatever those things. So like in just the practice of repeating a simple mantra of I forgive you, then the energy dissipated and it allowed it to just like the whole thing to dissipate. And again, that didn't mean I needed to be friends with that person again, that the relationship needed to change, but it was the releasing of the energy and of the anger and all of that. And so then, and so that like, how was it started? And then I do still use it for myself and for other people, because again, when we get upset with ourselves and shame, and I can't believe I did that and blah, blah, blah. And I haven't managed my money well, or this, I thought I was better, whatever the things are where you're beating yourself up, to then say it to yourself. And that it's really powerful too. You can go say it in the mirror, or you can just, close your eyes and do it, whatever works for you. But just repeating, I forgive you. For me, it just, again, like dissipates that energy. So then I can sort of come back down to earth and like talk to myself on a calmer level, and then be like, okay, so what can I do about this? Like that's like, sometimes you might be in those should have moments and you can't even get through it because you're just so in the heightened shame. So it's like, you might want to do the I forgive you practice first to then be like, whew, okay, now, all right, so that already happened. Okay, this, that. So like for me, it really just lands me back to, I'm a human on this earth doing the best that I can. And I don't want to admit that, how could that be my best or whatever? But I was like, that was what happened. And I'm here, like, again. So it sort of like takes me out of judgment mode for others and myself.
And it's, even as you were saying it, there's a cathartic energy shift when you were saying it calmly the way you were, that I was starting to feel both forgiven, but almost, almost like a tearing up. Like there's just that emotion of, it's releasing something. I don't know if I want Tricia to say that 3 or 4 more times. I might have an emotional outpouring on the podcast. Let's switch the topic.
I love it.
And it reminds me of one of the books I read. The author said we're all 4 or 5 "Are you okays" away from an emotional breakdown. Right? Because it's just that superficial level of, hey, how you doing? And it's, well, no, really, how are you doing? And so it's when you start to have that level of self-forgiveness, and I could imagine being in front of the mirror and saying it to yourself, just really pouring out the emotion that, especially as adults, as partners, as parents, like it feels like so much of life just gets locked away for what has to happen versus just living, if you will.
Totally. And that's, the whole original, idea of like the should, effing the shoulds, was that the realization that I had no clue how much, as me, someone who was living a life of my choosing that I loved, was still subconsciously many times like going through these motions of how I should feel about myself, which like different things like that too. So it's just, our lives are so busy and so full, and who knows what's really happening in that mind of you and like what you're feeling. So yeah, you could probably do the forgiveness practice. You could start your day, you could end your day, you could take a midday break, even if you have no idea what you're forgiving yourself for. And I bet it would resonate with something like, where you're like, oh, I'm getting emotional here. Just like make that space for like connecting to yourself and giving yourself that love.
And what jumped out as you were saying that, and I can't believe I hadn't made this association yet, but part of the shoulds is also the shouldn'ts. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't show emotion. I shouldn't cry. I shouldn't do this. And really, those are shoulds in a different form, that shape how we behave, and that may not be who we want to be as our whole self. Does that make sense or resonate?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that, and yeah, it's a whole, yeah, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, how you should move for life, what you shouldn't like. Like there's so much of the should nots are a huge part. And in many ways, they might be more punishing because if you have gotten the information from somewhere, based on how you're raised, based on media, whatever, I should not do this, I should not like this, then again, you end up carrying a lot of shame. I have carried shame for the silliest things, like for reading, because I like to enjoy novels and listening to pop music, because I believed I shouldn't like those things. I should like, more educational things or something like that. Like that's what I was believing. So a lot of the shouldn'ts create so much shame for us. And I'm like, why? But I like this. It brings me joy. What am I talking about? Like the shouldn'ts are very punishing. And like I said, can have us really living with a lot of shame for even small things. Because it's a lot of what will that mean about me? Like I shouldn't cry because we're unknowingly going to, because what is that going to mean about me? What are people going to think about me? Does that mean I'm weak? Does that mean blah? Like, I don't know why I'm crying. I don't have a reason to cry, so I shouldn't be crying. Like, we're living by all of these rules that don't make sense, and we don't even really, most of the times, know where they've come from. Sometimes we are like, oh, yeah, because when I was little, somebody said don't cry in public. Like, so sometimes there are, but sometimes it's just because we're trying to be somebody that other people will approve of and trying to, like, again, like, gain this validation. But then it's like we're looking for validation when we're not even honoring ourselves to be validated. Like, validate this version of me that I think you might like. Oh, you don't like that part? Okay. How about this one?
Yeah.
And it's all meaningless.
Well, we're going to get into that.
You're not you.
We're definitely diving into that. It's I always laugh because people tell you all the things you can't do to be successful. You can't watch Netflix. You can't watch reality TV. I mean, I binge watched the entire season of Selling Sunset yesterday, and I had a pretty productive, successful day. So you can do these things. They aren't impossible. But what that brings me to, because you also talked about media, and I've started to label it, so I want to use it as much as possible so it can end up on a Wikipedia page. But I call it the Kardashian effect. And why I label it the Kardashian effect is not because I have anything against the Kardashians. Absolutely love them. Fabulous what they've done with their lives and what they've created. And it's led to, I feel as if they were the ones who popularized the front of stage, social media, living your best life, showing your best life, no one seeing the bad, and creating this world where we have this paradox of always comparing ourselves to something that isn't real. And that leads to a massive amount of shoulding. And what you wrote was having so much access to information can have us looking outside of ourselves more and more instead of looking inside and trusting ourselves. An important concept that you tied to that was this idea that, wait a second, what works for them doesn't have to work for us. And what works for us doesn't have to be for them. Can you take our listeners through that? Because that felt like such an important concept in today's social media age.
Yeah. And I just hope that by hearing that, people like got a little sense of freedom. Like nothing, we're all so different. It's funny because when you really think about it, it was like, yeah, do we really think that like everybody should be doing the exact same things and that it's always gonna like look the same to everyone else too? So that's an insight. Back when I was trying my way into the live sound engineering world, that was one of the gifts from that lesson because I was just there learning, showing up. And so I would end up like supporting different sound engineers every day. And I got to see that a lot of these guys, it was mostly guys, did it differently. How they set the things up, how they did sound, hey, that was different. And so that one was great for me because I then be able to learn to like do things many different ways and whatever, figured out I was like that. But like that really imprinted on me a different way. Like they were all good and yet they were getting the end result from a different way. They were doing things and they would, each one of them would be like, this is the way you do this. The next day, this is the way you do this. Like, so I was getting them very firmly, this is the way you do this. My way is the best way. Right? So I saw like dozens of my way is the best way. And I just be like, uh-huh. So that really, I think, was helpful to really see, like, sure is. I've seen it done 10 other ways, but I've never like fought them on it. But like that, I think that really did have an imprint on me of like seeing that. But it just, yeah, like it's, why we're all unique and different. So why do we think that there is this one way for things? And I think it's interesting too, because when you look at usually the people that you're inspired by, that have made a difference, that have the success, you're like, that's awesome. They likely never didn't follow somebody else's, like, this is how you should do this. Like, pretty much all the people I think we look up to, it's because they did things their own way. They did things slightly different. They went out of the box. They trusted themselves. They believed in themselves. But then we're like, so I should do it that way. Let me model my life after them.
Yes.
So I think that's also another like freeing thing to remind yourself, because it can be so easy. And there's a ton of people out there selling you, this is the way to do this successfully. Just follow these steps. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the actual same results as that person. They're going to give you a lot of information, but that doesn't mean you're going to get the exact results as someone else. So I think it's so powerful to listen to yourself, to trust yourself, to allow yourself to try things on, to not see that changing your mind is a bad thing, or like even like failing is a bad thing, because it's like we have to all figure out what works best and feels best for us. And sometimes you don't know that until you start to play with it. But yeah, like your way is your way. It doesn't feel good, right? Like if somebody is telling you this is the exact way that you have to do this, it's not going to feel good. And so then also thinking of that for other people. So that's even with my kids. It's like, there's not like one way to do things and this is the way you have to do this. And I think that's a really,
yes,
it's been a fun way to parent that way so far. I mean, they're 5 and 7, almost 6 and 8, but to like, even with like homework and stuff or like their grades, it's okay, honey. Yeah, my one of my daughters had a meltdown the other day because she had a project and her handwriting is messy. And she's like, my handwriting is just a bunch of scribble scrabble. And she like kept repeating it and like meltdown. And I was like, did someone say that to you? Like, where did you get that term anyway? And I was just like, honey, but it's okay. You're young, you're learning. And it's also, that's not the end of the world. Like you're so creative. You're like this. It's just like, we're all like just seeing that you don't have to be the best at everything and that different people learn and that she's still learning. I don't know, just to even be like, it's okay, honey. You're learning. And also, even if your handwriting stays messy, it's going to be okay. I was like, I can't read my own handwriting a lot, hun. Like, and I'm an adult. I can't really read my handwriting. Do you think that about mommy? And that's the truth. And you're like, so what is, so what is that? How does that feel about yourself? Like, it's like, honey, I can't even read my own handwriting. Like, that was like...
You're making me remember when my oldest, he turns 15 next month. And when he was in kindergarten or grade 1, like we got called into the school to meet with the teacher. And they had this like, almost like an occupational therapist because his pencil grip was wrong. And it was like, hey, we've got to get him these special tools to improve his pencil grip so that he can have good writing. And I thought, he's in kindergarten. Like, who cares how he holds a pencil? Like it was. I don't know what the world's changed since I was a kid. I don't think any occupational therapist came in to change my pencil grip back when I was a child. So pivoting on that, one of the reasons we get a little bit afraid to try things on or do things our own way is that fear of being judged, that people are going to think a certain way about us. And there's a couple things that jump out at me there. One is the spotlight effect. So we too often think that other people are actually thinking about us when in reality, we're a side character in their story. And the second one is you have a 3-step process that I thought was wonderful that I'd love to take the listeners through when it comes to these judgments is 3 questions we can ask ourselves. What am I telling myself? Do I believe that or want to believe that? And what do I actually want to believe? Can you take the listeners a bit through that, and let's help them get over this fear of being judged when in reality it's not a reality?
Yeah. I think the fear of being judged is one of the most limiting things that comes up continuously all day long in so many different ways. And it sucks. So yeah, again, this is again like going back to childhood and realizing that that was what it was. Like I was the fear of what do people think about me. So it's the fear of being judged, which by the way, I'm just going to plant this in here. I also say that I don't think the fear of failure is real because if you're not afraid of being like, I think the fear of failure is still the fear of being judged, because why else would you be afraid of failing if you weren't worried about what other people thought about you? Like, otherwise, what would it matter, right? So, like, is the fear of failure even real if you're not worried about what other people think of you? So that's what I think the main fear in life is, the fear of being judged. Even bigger than the fear of failure. So that's why I was like, okay. So yeah, so when I realized, well, again, this is a lot of times happening subconsciously, unknowingly, we are living out our lives in this, what will other people think of me, instead of, wait, what do I think of me? What do I want? So when I realize when I'm in this, what are people going to think? The fear of being judged. So yeah, what am I telling myself? And this could be, oh, they're going to be like, oh, Tricia, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Or, oh, why is she wearing that? Or whatever. So it's normally like, you can feel, like, I can feel this like smallness come up in my body, sort of like, oh, I'm afraid to do this thing. I'm worried about being judged in some way. If I say this, what are they going to think? Whatever. If I, even pitch myself for something, like, that's the thing. We're afraid of getting a no, but if are we going to think like, huh, how dare she? Or just whatever the thing is. So what am I telling myself? And then, like, just being honest, like, okay, what am I telling myself? And then simply asking yourself, is this what I want to believe? Is one of the biggest game changers for me. Because even if you don't get to that third question of what do I want to believe, it's just being able to question that. Like, oh, I'm afraid that they're going to say this, or they're going to blah, 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 or people are going to think this about me. Is that what I want to believe? Just even that is so freeing to be able to question that. Like, great, that's a thought that is coming up, but do I want it? Do I want to take that as a belief? Yes. No. And so then asking, like, what do I want to believe? And that's really fun. It can be scary also, because we're not, a lot of times you're not used to allowing yourself to like have this different choice in possibilities. We're so used to shooting ourselves down and just living into that fear of what other people think of us and other people want from us. So that's what I'm saying. For some people, they might not even be able to get to that next question. So just being able to say, is that what I want to believe? No. I ask you, what do you want to believe? Like, I believe that I'm allowed to have a chance. I believe that I would want, if I was talking to my best friend, I would tell them like, yeah, you got this. Even, for wearing things like, oh, I don't know, is this too flashy? Or does this look like women body image stuff? Like, I still, unfortunately, can have this detangling of like, oh, I want to wear this dress. Oh, never mind. Oh, I don't know. I don't think whatever. And so I will like stop myself from wearing something I want to wear because, oh, am I, not thin enough, or my arms not fit enough to be shown in public? Like, so it's like really telling myself, what am I saying here right now? That I'm not allowed to wear this dress because my arms aren't as toned as I've been led to believe they must be toned. But like, is that what I want to believe? No. What do I want to believe? I want to believe that what I would tell my daughters, my best friend, when I see people on the street, I don't criticize them, but for some reason I'm criticizing myself for what I'm wearing. Like, I want to believe that I am allowed to wear what I want because it makes me feel good. And that what matters is how I feel and not how I look, whatever. So it's like really being able to, and again, this can be very confronting because it feels easier to not acknowledge these thoughts that we have about ourselves. Because really what's happening when we're in that fear of being judged, we are judging ourselves. When you're afraid of being judged for doing something, being something, wearing something, seeing something, when I am in that moment of, oh no, what are people going to think of me? I am judging myself for that thing. And when I first realized this, I was like, no, that can't be true because I love myself. I'm so blah, blah, blah. I'm Tricia the joyologist. Here's all my information. So I don't think that about myself. But then again, it's like realizing, oh, these thoughts that I have about myself aren't even my like, it's not my fault. That's the conditioning from society that I've been taught to hate my body,
Yes.
that I have been told to keep myself small, that I have been taught, how dare you put yourself out there? How you don't know what you're doing. Like, we have taken in so much information that makes it easier for us to stay smaller, to stay in some sort of box of shoulds. So that is what I'm telling myself, is really noticing I'm judging myself here. You're like alone having that thought. You have not stood outside and there was a room full of people going, you're this, you're terrible. Like, these thoughts that we're thinking that people are going to have of us, this fear of being judged, is not happening. We're not standing in a room with people shouting things at us. We are usually alone, and it is ourselves. So realizing it's yourself, and then again, being able to ask yourself, is that what I want to believe? And then allowing yourself to have some other choices. I want to believe I'm awesome in my body. I want to believe that that I'm capable of giving myself a chance. I want to believe that, whatever the things are, it can be confronting, but then it's really enlivening and exciting that I don't have to believe those thoughts.
Well, and that brings us almost full circle, because when you go back to the beginning, we were talking about chasing validation, but we can only validate ourselves. And then we get to the end and we're talking about self-enoughness and that feeling of enoughness, which for me really resonated, because not feeling enough has driven my entire life. And the realization you had was that you were afraid of being rejected. So in turn, you were rejecting yourself, which is what we're talking about here. So that ties, if I'm not off on this, the question we started with to now, full circle, I have to be the one who recognizes I'm enough to move forward in the world.
Yeah. And it's like constant. And so it sneaks into all these different ways. But yes, it's really like all the same, that we are looking outside of ourselves to be accepted. We're putting, like, that's what the shoulds are too. Like, here, make my choice for me. Tell me what to do. Tell me, like, well, what should I do? What should I eat? How should I look? Whatever. How should I be successful? Blah, blah, blah. We're going after things based on how we think they look, what we should do. But really, it's then coming back to, oh, it's me. What do I believe about myself? What do I want to believe is possible? How do my life choices feel to me? Because I do think that's a big other part of it that we're not aware of. We're chasing the feeling, being enough, being fulfilled, being successful based on what we think that should look like. What does success look like? What does being enough look like? So, and that's not our fault. Again, that's the conditioning. So remember, it's just like that. But like, oh, right, I don't feel enough because I think I should look this way. I should have a 5-step morning routine. I should go to bed at this time. I should have this much money. I should vacation like this. Like, whatever the things are that you don't even realize you're thinking. But it's like, but what does it feel like? And what does that feel like to you in your life? And so again, it's like this constant coming back to yourself. Because there's so much that we're just constantly looking out. Where are my answers?
Yes. Do you have time for 4 rapid fire questions that we ask all our guests?
Yeah.
All right. Well, a slight pivot away from the book. What is one book that's had a massive change on your life?
Oh, why am I forgetting the name right now? I'm going to have to send you the name of the book. It's like punk rock and the art of, I don't know. It was somebody, it's like, it is sort of a personal development book, but it's more a memoir of this person's life. And he did everything. Like, he became, I think, like a monk. He wanted to work at this Japanese animation studio. Like, he was a punk rock musician, whatever. So it was his story of like chasing everything that would bring him peace, that would bring him success. Like, he was in Japan living with the monks. He got his dream job. He got everything. Everything that he worked so hard for came true, and he was still miserable. That was one of the most inspiring books I
ever read. I love it. We don't even need the name. We got the message.
And there's another.
So what's on the bookshelf right now?
What am I reading? Another similar one is, what is it? After the Ecstasy, the Laundry is another one I love too, which is a bunch of short stories. And so it's the same sort of thing. And even these people that were striving for like the ecstasy of like meditation, like meeting this like peak, and then, oh, but I still have to do laundry. So it's like the reality of life. Like those books brought me so much peace of like, and life goes on, and life's going to be hard, and life's going to be challenging. And it's not like you figure it out and you have everything and then everything's easy. So those are the books that have inspired me and brought the most comfort and has sort of like acknowledged the humanness. What's on my bookshelf right now is I pretty much only read novels and memoirs. And that's like when I talked about earlier that I sort of had shame about reading novels. I wouldn't admit it for some reason because I felt like I should only be reading educational, learning from my peers, all of this. And I will still get those books and I'll like page through them. A part of me too doesn't want to read them because then I'm afraid I'm going to like take their content as my own or something, which I know is kind of a BS thing. But really, I just love, one of the biggest self-care things for me is reading a novel and getting lost in an amazing story. And I also think how rude of me how rude of me to feel shame for liking those things, but also for not feeling that novels are not educational. Like even if I'm reading a summer romance beach read, I am being captured into somebody's, like, I'm really like playing into some sort of humanness. Like I get inspired from these stories and stuff like too, but it also is the biggest act of self-care for me because watching a show, I can tune out. I can't tune out when I'm reading a book. When I'm reading a novel, I'm like so lost in the story and I can't be like, oh, let me just check my phone real quick. No, I need to like be on that page. So
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that novels improve our emotional intelligence. That idea of being put into other people's shoes, seeing life from different people's standpoints, that gives us the opportunity to get exposed to other people's points of view, which creates empathy. And so there is power to novels. So it's, definitely we need to not feel, or we want to read them and not feel that it's not a reasonable choice to do it. That's a really hard one. That was a hard one to switch shit out on. What is something for under $1,000 that Tricia has bought in the last year that you've said, wow, I should have bought that sooner? Oh, you wouldn't say I should have. I really want to have bought that sooner.
I would have. That would have been a smart choice to buy sooner. Less than $1,000 in the last year. Oh, I feel like there was something that I'm pulling a blank, but I will say, I can't think. I feel like there really was something that I was like, oh man, that was a great choice for my life. But another one was like a wireless speaker thing. And that's another thing that I actually want to get another one, like finally getting like a Sonos speaker or something too. Like it's so much different because I would just like, play music on my phone or headphones or something like that. And it's been and even for my kids too, like a joy. We ended up putting it outside when I have, and it just like, it is like, I'll like go out there and have a dance party or something. Like it's something like, I could use my headphones. I can just use the TV speakers. I can just use my phone speaker. It's like there were other ways to hear music, but like having that speaker like really did create this more joy and like nurturing and like fun in my life.
I love that. And I bought a couple Sonos speakers that could travel earlier this year. So this will be the first summer where we can stick them in the backyard while we're, having a barbecue or whatever it is, and have the music outside. So I definitely look forward to what you're saying there. I definitely appreciate that one. Because the show is about growth, what is one habit, mindset shift, or behavior change you've made in your life, and it can't be switching should to wants, that has had an oversized impact on improving your life?
Yeah, my obvious one is definitely eliminating the shoulds. There's so many, and even the talk or the quote that I highlighted on, but you know what? The one that came up to me when you were saying that and told me I could not use the should to want switch is, for a while I had this craving to get tattoos on my fingers, on my hands. And I was like, why am I craving to get tattoos on my hands? Like, what is it? What is that about? Like, why do I want that? And I realized that I wanted it, for me, it was a reminder that I am here to be me. Like, I am not here to be anybody else. Like for some reason that was like a marker to me that like, you are here to be yourself. You're not here to be anybody else. And so like, along with all this other stuff, it's this constant reminder that we're going into this default of what we should do. What do we want from people? What works for me? Like not allowing ourselves to do these things differently that might work for us. And then reminding like, I'm here to do things my way. I'm not here to be anybody else or do anything else. So I don't know if it is a mindset shift for me to like bring myself back to, again, because I will start to resort to, oh, but this way or that or this, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, I'm here to be me.
Yeah, it resonates with me a lot because as a CFO by day, I often find you can get put in a box. Well, you are this because you're an accountant. And I like to think, well, no, that's just, I chose that as a career. That is not a definition of me. And so I do have a half sleeve on one arm and tattoos on my other forearm. And for me, those are, no, I'm not in your box. You want me in a box as a CFO. I'm me. And these are for me to show you in a way. I'll never be in your box. Whatever your box is, I'm living my life for me. And so they are for me. So I absolutely 100% resonate with that, even though I hid it for a number of years until I got the role. And then it was like, T-shirts to work. So we went pretty far and wide on the book. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to make sure you get across to the listener today?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, we hit a lot of nook and crannies of the book there. From the book. There's more in there. And like I said, there's even ways of like figuring out how to deal with the times that are like, wow, this shouldn't be happening when life sucks, or procrastination. So how that you can like make things. So I go into all the different angles so that you can't be like, oh, but some things have to be a should. I'm like, okay, well, let's look at it differently. But you know what, I think, and I mentioned this at the beginning, and it's one of the last chapters of you're allowed. Like, I really like want to like drive that in to like, you are allowed to be yourself. You're allowed to do things your own way. You're allowed to change your mind. Like, just to like take that with you today. Like, I am allowed. And what shows up for you when you even say that? Yeah,
it's beautiful. And how can our listeners find you?
I'm at yourjoyologist.com. You can get the book, wherever it's available. You can also go to ftheshouldsdotheonce.com for links. And I'm most active on Instagram and TikTok at _Tricia Huffman. Oh, and I also have a podcast, the Claim It podcast.
We'll have all that.
If you want to download the chapter 1 of the book for free, and I have like some like from the heart talks, you can go to yourjoyologist.com/gift. I forgot that I have that. So that's a good way too. You can like, see by listening to this episode, I'm sure that you are like, I'm going to get that book right now. But if you're still on the fence, go download chapter 1 for free.
Yeah, you definitely should get it right now. It's not only
you want to get it right now.
Great interior. It's a beautiful cover, and if you're going to judge a book by its cover, then this is one you should pick up and read, and you won't be disappointed. So definitely do it. I loved it, and Tricia, I found it because I went into the bookstore. It was turned out, and I took a photo and sent it to my wife and said, "Let's talk to Tricia." So you did a great job on your cover art, and I loved the read and really enjoyed our conversation today. Thank you for joining me on the Growth Guide podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you like the podcast, you'll love our new newsletter, The Growth Guide. Every Thursday, straight to your inbox, with the goal to help you be better, achieve more, and become financially free. Check it out at our website, thegrowth.guide. Subscribe and learn more.